So I lost my website, family stuff is still going on, and I'm still in a deep, deep, dark depression that I don't know if I'm ever going to recover from. Time to talk about one of my favorite bands in Killswitch Engage in Backwards Marathon. You know the rules by now, so let's get right into it with the original self-titled album. This album is very underrated for a lot of reasons, although I would say probably at this point, the main reason I would feel it's underrated is because 4 songs off this album were re-recorded and re-released at different times. Be it on Alive or Just Breathing, a B-side for The End of Heartache, or the re-release of Alive or Just Breathing. There are songs off of here that are shown off so very well, honestly kind of better on other albums. Although I will say, altogether, I do really like the approach that's going on here. The album is probably the most raw Killswitch Engage album ever. The band just feels like they have something to prove on this album, and they really didn't even need to because the songs were so good even then. But of course, this is probably the most underrepresented album in the Killswitch catalog as well, which is not a bad thing. And again, as I've already mentioned, when you already have songs that are shown off on other albums from here, it almost feels like it's kind of like a glorified demo in a sense, and in a way, you can't really knock it for that. I mean, still, technically, it is the first LP, and I think even the band kind of thinks of it as a demo as well, because, as you'll see later, there's already another self-titled album that comes later, so in a way this is kind of a demo. But it's a great demo, and one that is absolutely worth checking out. And even with all of that said, I still think it's a fair representation of the band, but I will still give it a C. Now comes the good stuff here with Alive or Just Breathing. Arguably the best album Jesse Leach was able to lay his vocals for in Killswitch, but then again, I don't think there was ever a misfire with Jesse on here, but if you want to count this album as the first true Killswitch album, it's hard to find a better debut album than Alive or Just Breathing. Every single song hits so hard. There's such great catchy moments on here, whether there's blasts, whether it's just going into some of the most melodic moments of the band, whether there's the great sing-along choruses that really revolutionize things in what I refer to now as second-wave metalcore. Whether you agree or disagree, that's how I refer to it as. But this album is just stellar from start to finish, and I really can't find a better second-wave metalcore album, especially a debut album, that rivals what Alive or Just Breathing was able to accomplish, so of course, I'm giving it an S. Next up, Jesse Leach had to step down for several reasons, although he was able to carry on in bands like Seamless, the man, the myth, the legend, Howard Jones, who's now working again with Adam D as a few days ago to be able to put out a new project. I am chomping at the bit to see what that's all about, but he made his stamp here with Killswitch Engage. But not only was Howard Jones a part of this album as a debut, but Justin Foley, his bandmate in their previous band Blood Has Been Shed, also debuts on this album. It is the quintessential perfect Killswitch Engage album as well. If Live or Just Breathing may be the best Jesse album, The End of Heartache is the best Howard Jones album. I mean, it's just perfect from start to finish. Every song on here is perfection. Thanks to the Freddy vs. Jason soundtrack, that's how I first discovered Killswitch, and of course, a song off of this very same album. It's also the album that, if you hate this style of music, is probably the first album you heard from the band and the reason why you hate the band. And you are wrong for thinking so. I'm sure I pissed a lot of people off saying that, and this might not even be the only other S album that shows up on here, but yeah, my prejudice is showing. It's an S album. As Daylight Dies. Now, how do you follow up one of the best second-wave metalcore albums of all time? You follow it up with an album that's potentially on par with As Daylight Dies. It's kind of sad to see that it's kind of held in lower regard from what I've noticed. I mean, there's so many great songs on here. Some of my favorite Killswitch songs are off this album, and I think it deserves that representation more than it's given credit for. Yes, it's not The End of Heartache, but it's not supposed to be. Is there moments of the End of Heartache on here? Of course, why wouldn't it be? I mean, it was such a successful album. How could they not try to recapture some of that fire? But this fire still burns. See what I did there? This fire burns. Okay, I'll stop now. This is a stellar album, and I probably don't hold it as high up as Alive or Just Breathing or The End of Heartache, but I think without question, it's an A. The self-titled album, or the second self-titled album, depending on how you want to look at it. Again, this album here, I look at as a glorified demo. And this album, I look at as the true self-titled album. And this is probably the most polarizing Killswitch album. Not only is it the last album with Howard Jones, but it is also the album that features the most clean singing. It has some of the most radio-friendly songs on here. But I also feel it is the most emotional album the band has ever put out. It's the only album outside of one other song I will get to later that does bring me to tears. And I think it is one of those albums that deserves that fair representation. I can't say it enough. This is a dangerously underrated album. And whether you like second wave metalcore, whether you like more radio rock or radio metal, or if you just need something a little bit lighter than all of the brutal death metal that you seem to listen to, I think this album is a great album to just be able to kick back and relax. This album is so good, and it deserves more love than it gets. And I'm giving it an A. Disarm the Descent, the angriest, most volatile album of Killswitch Engage's discography. And there was a lot of reasons for it. Jesse came back and wanted to prove that he is one of the best vocalists of all time, which, spoiler, he does show that off on this album. The music is full of anger because some of this was written with Howard Jones in mind, and of course, the fallout that happened with the band, unfortunately. But of course, it seems like things seems to be patched up in some way, shape, or form with the new project. And of course, the band's being able to tour together with Light the Torch, one of Howard Jones's bands, opening for Killswitch last year. But this also just had a lot of anger with it because of all the changes that were happening in the band, the changes in the world, and the music is so representative of that. While there is some kind of radio rock catchy choruses that happen in here, you don't hear more blast beats than you do on this album. You don't hear as much volatile hatred as you do on this album. Just anger at the whole world, anger at life, anger at everything. And it's an album that hits me very, very hard. Back when this came out in 2013, I would listen to this all the time when I was going to work. And it put me in a mood to be able to put up with everybody that I had to for 8 hours a day. And it just felt so good to be able to have something like this, to be able to get into the car and just crank it on the way to work and on the way back. It's an album that's near and dear to me, and it's one that deserves all the attention that it can get. I know it's not necessarily held in the highest regards in the Killswitch catalog, but it's one that you should go back to. And for all those reasons and more, I'm giving it an A. Incarnate is next, and due to unfortunateness on my end, not being able to check out this album enough, it's the album that I have actually listened to the least. There was too many things going on when this album came out in my personal life for me to be able to really appreciate this album. But even when I do go back and listen to it, it is a great, solid album from start to finish. I don't have as great of moments attached to this album, but it is a great album, and you can really tell that Jesse's getting back in to the swing of things. His lyrics are getting better. His emotions are coming through so well. I was able to interview Justin Foley on this album, which I thought was really cool. Same day as I got my electric kit, which I don't get to play anymore for various reasons. But it was awesome to be able to talk to Justin for that, and unfortunately, I wasn't able to make the show. I know it was a killer show that they made. If I had more sentimental attachment to it, I know I would rank it higher, but I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to be able to rank this as a B. And finally, until the new Killswitch Engage album comes out, potentially this year, maybe next year, I really don't know. I'm waiting for that press release like everybody else is. We got Atonement, and I feel like this is a better version of the previous album. It feels stronger The emotions are well intact. Jesse feels like he's at his most comfortable writing-wise here, and it feels like the most jam-packed, full to the brim, complete Killswitch album in quite some time. And of course, with a song that makes me cry every time I think about it, and I'm going to do my best to hold up here, straighten up my invisible tie here, because I want to be able to present a good quality video for you. I'm going to hold back the tears as I talk about I Am Broken Too, which of course is all about suicide and trying to help others because you are struggling yourself. I don't know how this album really holds up for everybody else, but this is an album that is near and dear to my heart. Seeing how long Killswitch has been in the game, it's awesome to see everything that they've been able to pull off in all of this time. And while it might not be my favorite Killswitch album, it does have some of my favorite Killswitch Engage songs. And yeah, I'm going to put this as an A. Give me a second here while I rearrange these in order. Be right back. And that barely took any time. Let's start from the bottom. Now we're here and go all the way to the top. Starting at C is the original self-titled Killswitch Engage album, which again, what do you consider it? Do you consider it a demo, or do you consider it the first real LP? I'm curious. Comment down below. Following that, at B we have Incarnate, the solo album in the B rank. At the A rank, we have Atonement, Disarm to the Scent, As Daylight Dies, and shocking probably everybody, at the top of the A rank, the real, true Killswitch Engage self-titled album. And in the S tier, surprising nobody, the best two Killswitch Engage albums are of course Alive or Just Breathing, and my personal favorite, The End of Heartache. And that's the backwards marathon for Killswitch Engage. Thank you for sticking around. If you like this ranking, if you don't like this ranking, if you have your own, or if you just want to tell me how wrong I am for my own personal opinion, tell me down below. And of course, like, comment, subscribe, all of that good stuff. And until the next Backwards Marathon, top 10 list, interview, review, or any other video I put up here for the Heavy Debriefings YouTube channel, this is Josh Runquist saying, see ya.